Hello, everyone. Afternoon. Welcome to the Natural History Museum and to this unique event launching the International Mountmakers Forum in the UK. I will be referring to it as the IMF from now on, but this isn't to be confused with the Impossible Missions Force, which, if you do Google IMF, quite often comes up. Moving on. This is the first IMF event ever held in the UK, and this may well be the most Mountmakers ever in one room from the UK. And before I just go any further, I've just got to let you know the fire exits are just at the back, perhaps where you came in, one at the front here. The toilets are just back down the steps that you came up to get to the theatre. And if everyone could just switch their phones off, just make sure that they're on silent or switched off, that would be great. So for you, those of you who don't already know me, I'm Helen Walker, and for the past 8 years, I've worked here as an exhibition specialist. I'm part of a team of 4 other Mountmakers, all part of the exhibitions and conservation team, which is part of a wider group called Production Services. That includes engineers, painters and joiners, and special effects team. Together, we maintain the collections on display, and we also install the new permanent and temporary exhibitions here at the museum. My introduction to the IMF started in 2010 when I was asked to come and speak at the second conference in Washington. I'd submitted an abstract about a particularly challenging case in the new Darwin Centre cocoon, and I was interested in attending an event that was solely aimed at Mountmakers because they're just so rare. It's worth mentioning at this point, I really didn't want to stand up in front of 250 of my peers and talk about what I'd been up to in the workshop. But this was a trade-off for getting to go to the talks, the great poster sessions, and all the tours on offer. So I faced my fears, as I do here again today, so be kind to me. I was supported by the museum and by my bosses, luckily, and I was able to attend with my colleague Mike Peel, who, if may say so, got off extremely lightly by only having to write the paper accompanying the talk rather than giving the talk itself. And apart from some pretty embarrassing Brits abroad sunburn gained on the first day of our trip, the whole thing was a real eye-opener. Until this point, I might have believed that Mountmakers were meant to stay in their windowless basements, never to mingle. But pretty quickly, I realised the benefits of being part of the forum and around similar minds. Coming back to the UK, though, I felt a bit deflated, so we don't really have anything similar over here, no real network for sharing ideas. But being part of the Google group, which was set up by the forum, really helped to keep me in the loop. So when I attended the third forum at the Chicago Field Museum, the number of Brits attending had grown, and I could see there was an opportunity to set something similar in motion over here. As you can imagine, this is easier said than done when you have a busy exhibition schedule. I work part-time and I have a toddler hell-bent on destruction. So, but I just thought the positives outweigh negatives, get up there. So that's what I'm doing today. I looked to other international forums already in place, like the ones that will be shown here. But these were all very conservation-based, and none of them really focused on specific mount-making projects. So I decided to get in touch with Sam Gately from the V&A, who's a senior textile display specialist, who I'd met out in Chicago at the third forum. And she'd shown an interest in getting something started over here. Since then, Sam's been extremely helpful and integral to getting this event off the ground, and I can't thank her enough. So she'll be summing up for us at the end of the event. Roger Murray, a mountmaker from the V&A, who will also be speaking later, he'll be talking about a mount that illustrates the really close relationship between conservation and mount making. And I find this particularly relevant as this is a topic that comes up again and again at the International Mountmakers Forum, as we all strive to solve the same issues. Although we work in similar fields, conservators and mountmakers tend to make quite different career paths to working with collections. A conservator can train to degree level and be accredited in their profession, whereas mount-making is more of a years served and time spent at the bench sort of vocation. I know mount-makers who've come from all sorts of different career backgrounds. You need only look at the biographies of our speakers here today to see the kind of variety of work they've been involved in. So if I was to suggest something, I think a mount-maker would be something more like this. One of the things that I really like about the forum is the professional issues it does address for Mountmakers. Mountmaking is a very niche career, and essentially if you've done it properly, nobody should really be or directly looking at what you've done. So perhaps that's why it's so often overlooked. An object or specimen may have many hours of conservation spent on it to secure its future on display, but then be allocated just a few hours for a suitable mount to be made, which might hold it in position for the next 10 years or so. We all handle collections, precious collections, that what undoubtedly will be the most traumatic time in their lives, making it from collection shelf to museum display. And in doing so, we all take on the responsibilities and challenges that go with that. I found the forum to be a really great place to start a conversation about these things, and I hope that you will do too. We've been really, really pleased with the attendance figures here today of Mountmakers and conservators, ready to talk about shared interest. But we also have designers, curators, tutors and students who were really, really pleased could join us as well. So my hope from this event is to introduce those of you who are not yet familiar with the forum to the benefits of it, and the possibility of hosting the forum here itself in 2017, 2018, possibly, and other future events in London. This really requires your buy-in, however. The forum requires staff and institutions willing to give tours of exhibitions and workshops, contributions of papers, posters, and participation in working groups. If we are able to get the forum off the ground over here, it'll also allow more of our European colleagues to join in with us, as well as the US team who got the ball rolling initially. So now's the perfect time to introduce the two men who did that. I met Mackenzie Lowry and BJ Farr at the second forum in Washington, where they shared a wealth of knowledge with the group through their talks and poster sessions. We're extremely grateful to them for being here and making the journey over from the Getty Villa in LA to talk to us today. And Mac will be the first up speaking about the origins of the forum, so please welcome him up to the stage.